トビデオ
I'm here now.
I've mentioned before that while I like fighting games, my overall skill at them rests in the below average range. But if there was one fighting game franchise that I could safely say that I'm relatively competent at, it would be the Tekken franchise. Good old Tekken, the king of Iron Fist tournament itself. Growing up in South Georgia, you didn't see much in the way of Street Fighter in the arcades and skating rinks, and the Mortal Kombat cabinets were always taken. But if there's an arcade cabinet that I could find reliably anywhere in Georgia, whether they be malls, pizza places, or university commons, it was always the Tekken cabinet. I remember coming across Tekken 2 at an arcade when I was around 9, and it was love at first sight, in all its blocky glory. I played nearly every single game, I know nearly every character, I have a main,
Love you, baby.
and you better believe I love rocking out to those soundtracks. The appeal of Tekken for me is kinda hard to say, but I'm gonna attempt to say it anyway. It's a game that's fully built around the 3D space it occupies. Not only do you need to know how to do combo, but you also need to be aware of your own surroundings. All of which is built around a roster that consists of the usual suspects of martial artists, street fighters, assassins, high school girls, ninjas, luchadors, Bruce Lee clones, capoeira practitioners, angry Spaniards, super soldiers, robots, prettier robots, bears, kangaroos, dinosaurs, more bears, practice dummies, demons, angels, vampires, whatever that is, disco dancers, breakdancing pop idols, characters from The Walking Dead, and Bob. But funnily enough, I got into Tekken around the same time I got into the genre of anime. And being that both of those things came from the same location, it stands to reason that there would be a Tekken anime. I could remember walking into my own FYE like it was only yesterday. I was flipping through the anime DVDs when all of a sudden, it caught my eye. An anime based on the fighting game franchise I had invested so many hours into. I picked it up, took one look at the cover art, and said to myself, nope.
To master the way, ask your own ken or fist, because complete knowledge of one's flesh, blood, and fist is what creates one's Tekken, and Tekken is the key to life!
1998's Tekken the Motion Picture is a low point for the franchise, especially when you take into account the other low points such as Revolution, the Dwight H. Little movie, and Blood Vengeance.
Oh, excellent!
The existence of this motion picture, so called because it's hardly an hour long, baffles me. Everything this anime does in adapting the story of Tekken is wrong. The art style is wrong. The characterization is wrong. The fight choreography is wrong. So many things in this anime are just wrong. To really understand the amount of quality that lies within this train wreck, you need to look no further than the cover. Just look at this beauty. Those tumorous muscles look like they were ripped straight from Rob Liefeld's DeviantArt page. And that smirk. Golly, that is just the cherry on top of this warning sign of a cover. He doesn't look intimidating, he looks like he's about to tell you a bawdy joke involving farm animals and the like. What befuddles me more about this anime is that this was released when Tekken was hot. Tekken 3 was currently killing it at the arcades and was well on its way to home consoles both in its home country and in America. Not only that, but Tekken 3 is considered to be the pinnacle of classic Tekken both in terms of gameplay and in story. And this was the anime they commissioned to promote the brand?
This invitation could be a flattering one-way ticket to hell.
At no point in production did anyone from Namco or Sony or Studio Dean stop and say, hey, maybe this isn't a good product to best represent our fighting game franchise. Instead, it was given the treatment of, it's an anime, send it to print. Oh, how I could count the ways Tekken the Motion Picture is a complete botch job, both as an adaptation and as an anime itself. And that's what I aim to do here. Of course, there will be less counting and more groans of frustration. But before the critical rants can begin, there's probably one question on some people's mind right now. What exactly is Tekken? Not everyone is clued into the fighting game zeitgeist, and to those people watching this, I might as well have been speaking in an ancient forbidden tongue for the past couple of minutes. So guess what? It's time for a video game history lesson. 1993. Truly an historical year in popular culture. The last vestiges of the 80s had finally been shaken off, and the 90s could finally begin in all its flannel-wearing, grunge-rocking, and whatever manning glory. A year that gave us Crystal Soda, Snoop Dogg, A Healthy Fear of the T-Rex, the Warner Brothers, and the Warner Sister Dots, and a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure anime that will be completely erased from everyone's memory sometime around 2012. But most importantly, 1993 was a watershed year for the world of fighting games. The fighting game genre was at its pinnacle of relevance and reverence this year. Capcom was still riding the Street Fighter II wave high with the release of Super, SNK introduced the landmark Samurai Showdown franchise to the world, Mortal Kombat fatalities were causing elderly congressmen to fertilize their dress slacks. And that year, the company Sega had struck new ground with the release of a new fighting game franchise called Virtua Fighter. While it may not look anything special now, at the time, Virtua Fighter was a huge leap forward for video game technology, with it being the first fighting game to feature full 3D polygon graphics. This revolutionary transfer from 2D sprites to 3D models, crude as they were in comparison, really got the attention of other game companies, specifically one Namco Limited. At the time, Namco was also experimenting with 3D polygonal graphics, particularly ones that stood out with their Golrad shading and revolutionary texture mapping as seen in their arcade classic Ridge Racer. Once that was a success, Namco really wanted to see if they could apply those graphics to 3D models. So after acquiring some of the devs who worked on Virtua Fighter from Sega, including designer Seiichi Ishii, Namco set out to make their own 3D fighter with better textures and twice the frame rate. And on December 4th, 1994, the first Tekken game was released in Japanese arcades. Marketed towards smaller arcades as a cheaper alternative to the more expensive Virtua Fighter 2, Tekken was able to endear itself with a fighting game system that emphasized strategy and foresight over flashy combos. The game helped set a standard with 3D fighting games with its control scheme where each limb on a character would correspond with a single button, almost to make it feel like that you were not just controlling the blocky luchador in the Jaguar mask, you were the blocky luchador in the Jaguar mask. But another thing that really separated Tekken from the pack of fighting games was its story. Rather than just being centered around a tournament to see who's the greatest, the actual story of Tekken is centered around a quest for revenge. The fact that protagonist Kazuya Mishima wants revenge against his father, head of the Mishima Zaibatsu Heihachi Mishima, for killing his mother and throwing him off the side of a mountain when he was 5 as part of a screwed up ritual to test his son's strength. Kazuya survives and desires revenge so much that he makes a pact with a demon to ensure he can carry it out. 25 years later, Heihachi decides to hold a tournament to see if his son is worthy enough to crawl through the ranks and face him in the finals. It turns out that Kazuya totally is worthy enough, defeating his father in battle and tossing his unconscious body over the same cliff he was thrown off of as a child. A simple story, but compelling enough for fighting game standards. And it would only get better with a sequel where it establishes that a guy who's willing to make a pact with the devil just so he can kill his father might actually be the true villain of the overarching story. It's definitely enough of a story that an anime adaptation of it almost makes too much sense. And considering that Tekken 3 had just been released at that point, and was introducing the world to Jin Kazuma and his glorious Guy Fieri flame pants, this was the perfect time to release a Tekken anime. This should be a slam dunk, right? You got a story and a colorful cast to make, at the very least, a competent martial arts anime. This should be hard to not screw up. And what did they do? They screwed up. First, this isn't actually a movie. It's actually a 2-episode OVA welded together so it could pass itself off as a movie. A fact that's betrayed by its runtime of 55 minutes, and that is counting in credits. I bring this up because this anime movie, being so short, is one of the main reasons why this anime has problems in the first place. Okay, so the general plot of this anime is a combination of Tekken 1's storyline of Kazuya getting revenge on his father, and Tekken 2's storyline of the Mishima Zaibatsu being investigated for various international crimes, with Kazuya and T2 protagonist Jun Kazuma serving the roles as dual protagonists. Jun is sent to investigate Heihachi Mishima during the King of Iron Fist tournament, and there she meets Kazuya, who is there to kill his father. This melding of plots could conceivably work, as it all serves as a prequel to Tekken 3 where Kazuya and Jun's love child, Jin, plays protag. After all, one of the biggest mysteries of the Tekken universe is what the hell did Jun see in Kazuya that led to such a faithful night of passion? The anime attempts to fix this by A, filing off the edges of Kazuya's character and making him relatively more heroic and sympathetic, and B, giving the childhood friends angle on Kazuya and June. We'll get back to that. But the problem with this story is that 55-minute runtime. Both Tekken 1 and Tekken 2 have enough story to justify an OVA or even a feature film. Separately, you try to cram both of these plots into a story with less than an hour of runtime, and it all feels bloated. In the process of trying to blend the plot of the first two games together, it ultimately ends up watering down what makes those two plots special in the first place. Tekken 1's storyline is all about the lead up to Kazuya's start of darkness when he pays it forward to Daddy. That lead up is rendered moot when Kazuya has June whispering in his ear about how she knows there's still some good inside him all the way, and Kazuya hasn't really even done anything particularly villainous at that point. He doesn't even get to have his moment with Heihachi because, spoiler alert, Heihachi ends up getting away scot-free at the end. Meanwhile, Tekken 2's storyline is centered on playing off the ending of the last game with, hey, remember our hero from the first game? Oops, he's evil now and much worse than the last guy. This is the pivot that allows Jun to be able to do the whole I know there is still good inside of you conceit and have it work because Kazuya is already the bad guy at that point. Having Jun do it while Kazuya hasn't had that start of darkness moment ends up feeling pointless because, as I said it again, Kazuya hasn't thrown his father off the cliff at that point. The story would have been a lot stronger if they had chosen to do one or the other instead of having to do both and getting its drama all muddled. This is compounded by the scene in the beginning where Jun and Kazuya are seen as childhood friends and Jun actually witnesses Kazuya get thrown off the cliff. Why? Okay, I know why. It's to establish the convergence of the two game plots and better sell you the romance angle between the two characters. But the addition of Jun to the foundation of the entire plot of Tekken really causes some problems down the line. After witnessing what appeared to be the murder of one of her own friends at the hands of his own father, you'd think Jun would actually be totally on board with Kazuya exacting some vengeance on the old man. Plus, it really undercuts the drama element of the event once you had a third party to the equation. Not to ding all the plot holes here, but having someone witness Heihachi toss his own flesh and blood off a mountain would probably get the law involved at some point. But it's not just the story that's being told that's the problem, it's also how it's told as well. Being that the anime has such a limited runtime, a lot of the first half and even the second half of this anime is just devoted to exposition. Not even debriefing scenes, like characters going full as you know and having them explain who they are and what their relationships with one another in just one line of dialogue. It feels so unnatural that the most human dialogue in this anime comes from Heihachi's motive rant at the end, which is pure cartoonish supervillainy in the most delightful way.
Words like justice and truth are empty concepts that have led societies through cancerous histories. Through the ages, those who have blindly believed in these absolute truths have fought and died over empty platitudes. Don't you get it? The only way to truly salvage this disgusting world is to destroy everything on it so a new world can be rebuilt.
And for being centered around a tournament, this anime really takes its time getting there with all its setup and exposition. It's around 20 minutes until we get on the boat to the tournament, and the tournament proper doesn't even really start until the half-hour mark. I'm sure there were plenty of young Tekken fans having their own fireworks factory moment at this anime 15 years ago. But I think the biggest problem with Tekken the motion picture is that with all the storyline it can barely fit effectively within its short runtime, they still try to put subplots in there. Okay, hopefully I won't bore everyone by going off on tangents about the Tekken lore in this section, but I make no promises. So Jun is given a partner in the form of Jackie Chan XP Lei Wulong. The idea is obviously to give the two characters a buddy cop dynamic, with Jun as the serious straight lady and Lei as the wisecracking fun guy, but they barely seem to interact with each other because they go their separate ways almost immediately when they get to the tournament, and what little witty banter they do have is...
The Mishima Corporation may own this ship, but it's now under police jurisdiction. I would slowly put those guns down if I were you.
Hey, Motormouth, you could fight a little.
Huh?
Lei ends up going off on his own adventure with Killer Robot Jack 2, who is trying to find a cure for his little orphan friend Jane. He is doing this by entering the tournament and trying to find Dr. Paskanovich, the reluctant mad scientist for the Mishima Zaibatsu, who is trapped on the same island where the tournament is being held. This plotline was in the games to a certain extent, but it never got the attention other sub-stories had, like the Williams sisters storyline or King's storyline. In fact, in this anime, the subplot just feels kinda there. It only seems to be there to set up Jack 2 being killed off and inspiring Jane to make similar models of him in his memory, thus continuing the Jack storyline. Also, Roger the Boxing Kangaroo is there, and his presence certainly makes scenes feel all over the place tonally.
Will this succeed?
This is precisely the kind of thing genetic therapy ought to be used for.
Speaking of the Williams sisters, they're in this anime too. They mostly just exist either as fight scene fodder and eye candy, but right near the end we get this huge confrontation between Nina and Anna like the whole anime was building up to it, and it comes out of nowhere.
You're the one who did it, aren't you, Anna? You killed our father.
You'll pay for that.
And it ends with Anna being eaten by an invisible dinosaur. Oh yeah, there are dinosaurs in this anime. This is just the climax to another subplot involving Heihachi's adopted son and right-hand man, Lee Chaolan. If there was any character that got the short end of the stick in this anime, it's definitely Lee. While at this point in the series he was a sycophantic snake in the grass and not the stylish playboy we currently know him as, he still was presented as a serious character that was on or at least near the level of Kazuya. Here, he just sucks. Being played as a conniving pretty boy who resorts to cowardly tactics to attempt to kill Kazuya just so he can curry favor with his adoptive father. Naturally, it doesn't work, and all it takes is 5 fingers to the face to knock him out and send him on a murder-suicide rampage to destroy the entire island. By the way, if you watch this anime, watch it dub. Sure, you missed out on a Daisuke gory performance, but the dub makes the anime 10 times more entertaining. Observe. I was shocked to learn that this dub was done by ADV of all companies, because a dub this hilariously bad could have almost come from Central Park Media. Plus, they're usually a lot better with localization, so you would think they would catch that people were pronouncing Heihachi wrong.
Heihachi Mishima. Heihachi Mishima.
Heihachi Mishima.
Heihachi Mishima. Heihachi Mishima.
But I guess they didn't, considering none of their A-listers are on this dub and is mostly comprised of no-names. The only actor who really went on to do anything else is Lee's voice actor, Gray Hardwick. He's mostly known for his work on Ruby, so if any of you see him at any Rooster Teeth events, show him this.
3, 2, 1.
But that's basically it for all the subplots. They kinda ran out for the rest of the cast. Like, Michelle Chang attempts to have one by trying to get revenge on Heihachi for destroying her village, and that gets dropped as soon as it gets picked up. But it does give us this awesome scene. And everyone else is SO of L. The rest either act as faceless jobbers or silent background characters. And this is my biggest gripe with the story. This anime might be bloated as it is, but where does it get off by having franchise stables like Paul Phoenix, Yoshimitsu, and King stand around and do nothing like a bunch of cardboard standees? I mean, say what you will about Fatal Fury the motion picture, at least everyone got at least some time in the spotlight, even if it was just a job or act as fan service. But you know what? All these problems with the story and characterization would be so much more bearable if it wasn't for one big eyebrowed elephant in the room. Seeing clips from this anime so far in this video, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's clear to anyone with eyes that everything about this anime visually is grade A balls. It's an embarrassment of riches in terms of bad visual direction that you almost don't know where to start. I mean, we could talk about the character designs. I mean, look at those eyebrows. They look like the horns of a rare type of beetle. I mean, do they intercept satellite signals on those things? Because he even had those brows when he was a kid. That is priceless. But that's just a singular part of the problems with the visuals with this anime. The broader issue with Tekken the motion picture lies within the fact that it's one of the first anime productions to use digital animation. We've talked before about this era of anime and how it was chock full of growing pains in the transition between traditional to digital, but this is less growing pains and more growing agony. Lack of nuance in the coloring, obvious skyboxes, simplistic lighting that gives characters a greasy sheen to them, compression artifacts, and even glitching at one point. This presentation obviously is what makes this anime look so cheap, but when you actually see it in motion, it turns out that it could actually look even more cheap than it already is. Because guess what? The fighting scenes in this anime are not great. The fighting in this anime is already sporadic as it is due to all the exposition, so when we actually do get some fight scenes in this anime, it's very underwhelming. Most fights will just involve someone throwing one or two punches and then having their opponents escape or be knocked out. The choreography of these fights are so basic, and even on the rare chance we do get something interesting and theoretically awesome like Kazuya ripping a dinosaur in half, it's all ruined by the least dynamic animation and direction possible. I mean, why even have impact frames and dramatic camera movements when you could just have cells sliding across speed lines? Going back to Fatal Fury the motion picture, fight scenes were a little isolated in that anime too, but when they were there, it was obvious that the staff knew how to make them exciting and feel like they were big, huge action set pieces. They knew these scenes were for a movie and directed them as such. To get more specific, here are scenes from both anime that have the same job, to establish the protagonist's potential for kicking ass. In Fatal Fury, we have Terry Bogard get surrounded by mooks in an arcade. He gets an extended, well-choreographed fight scene that shows the audience that he can handle himself offensively in a fight. In Tekken, all we have is Jun countering a punch from Lei and Lei remarking with a, "Ah, I see you really are a master of the famous Kazuma School of Martial Arts." And that's really it. We could argue that the counter was enough to establish Jun's status as a fighter, but if it really was enough, why did we need Lei to confirm that she was a martial arts master in the first place? I'm just saying, one scene has a lot more show and the other has a lot more tell. But maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe when I want to watch an anime based on a game that has crazy martial arts, I shouldn't really expect that anime to fully deliver on the crazy martial arts front. Instead, I could just settle for animation on the caliber of Street Fighter the Animated Series, only not as hilarious. And I'm gonna keep it real with you, ADV, no amount of stabbing westward is gonna make these set pieces any more entertaining.
What? Down!
Not much thought was put into the creation of Tekken the motion picture. While Fatal Fury the motion picture was cheesy, it knew it had to deliver on being a big stinking movie for the Fatal Fury fans. It had an epic scale, plenty of awesome fight scenes, and my Shiranai's breast. What more could a fighting game fan ask for? Tekken, meanwhile, does not feel like a motion picture. It feels just like the naked cash grab it is, meant to promote the franchise and squeeze a couple of extra bucks out of the gullible fan base. The production company didn't care, the distribution company didn't care, the localization company didn't care. And why should they? Those who wanted more Tekken were gonna buy it anyway. And that cynical take blows because I know it came out at a time when a Tekken anime would have been perfect. Just imagine, a Tekken anime with the same level of quality as Fatal Fury the motion picture. Everyone getting their moment in the spotlight along with some crazy fight scenes, and maybe not having a plotline that forces me to sympathize with a guy that has been rendered the biggest bastard in fighting games via 20 years of hindsight. But, as I am reminded every waking day on this godforsaken rock, we don't live in a perfect world. We instead live in a world where your favorite fighting game franchise gets a shoddy cash-in anime that has little value aside from riffing material. It's not the worst fighting game anime adaptation in existence, believe me, but it's still such a wasted opportunity. Instead, Tekken the motion picture just leaves behind a legacy of being a cheap, visually unappealing joke. In the Tekken 3 roster of anime, it is gone. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna end this analysis on probably the most predictable joke I could have made in this video.
Get ready for the next battle. I fade him, run it, I fade him. I need that. I fade him, run it. I knock him down, run it, homie. I knock them down. Run it, homie. I knock them down. I need that. I knock them down. I knock them down. I knock them down. I knock them down. Run it, homie. I knock them down. Fist like Tekken. Jump kick, put tips on you in a second. Ready for the battle. You can pick the weapons. God fist.